Hey guys, what's up? Excoundrel here, and today we are going to be covering every single rifle in Rules of Survival. We are going to look at the damage, we're going to look at the attachments, we're going to look at a brief overview of the recoil, and we're going to talk about something called drop-off damage as well, which is an important factor to consider when choosing a rifle. Firstly, let's take a quick look at every single rifle that we're going to consider in this video. We're going to look at them from across both the old map, the new map, and those rifles that are specifically in the loot drops. The loot drop specific rifles are the AUG and the M249. The M249 is technically a light machine gun, so probably shouldn't be considered a rifle, but we're going to consider it a rifle for this video because it takes rifle ammo. Rules of Survival, you are forcing me to consider the light machine gun as a rifle simply because of that. We're also going to look at the AN94 and the ACR. They are new map specific, so you'll find those on the Fearless Fjord. So every single rifle you can see listed here, I'm sure you guys have got your own preferences for what you like to use. All of them have kind of varying stats. A lot of them are very similar, but there are some subtle differences between all of them. But I like to go through them in detail and look at them mathematically to make up my mind. And we're going to specifically talk about the M14 Ebr first, because I think this is arguably one of the best rifles that you can get in the game. I'm going to use the M14 Ebr to briefly outline the way that these videos work in terms of kind of what you need to assess on the screen. We're going to use this as an example so you guys know what the format looks like, and going forward to the next rifle examples, you'll kind of be able to look at it and know what I'm talking about. The damage range that you can see next to the target man, it basically shows you the damage that this rifle deals at short range. Short range is 0 to 50 meters in the game. And the spread of damage that you see is from having no armor, which is no helmet and no body armor, to level 3 armor, which is the maximum level armor or maximum level helmet that you can get in the game. So for the example of the M14 Ebr, if you shoot someone up close with the M14 Ebr in the chest, you're going to deal 41 damage if they have no body armor. If they have level 3 body armor and you shoot them up close in the chest, you're going to deal 18 damage. That is the maximum spread of damage that this rifle can deal, from the maximum to the minimum. You also deal 20 damage at all times to the legs and the arms. The M14 Ebr can take these attachments, a front end, a scope, and a mag. It also has got very, very low recoil. That's one of the things that makes the M14 Ebr good. But the main reason the M14 Ebr is one of the best rifles in the game is because it does not suffer from drop-off damage. Drop-off damage is the phenomenon that the further you shoot a rifle in Rules of Survival, the less damage it deals based on the range that you're firing it. For instance, at long range, the M4 will deal roughly 20% less damage than it would at short range. The M14 Ebr does not suffer from that. It is basically a high-speed sniper. Snipers also don't suffer from drop-off damage. It's why people play the M14 Ebr like a sniper, because it doesn't suffer from those long-range penalties that the rest of the rifles do. The equivalent to the M14 Ebr on the Fearless Fjord is the AN94. It has the same fire patterns, which is to say it has single fire and burst mode, and it takes the same attachments. However, the similarities stop there. The AN94 does suffer from drop-off damage, which is to say that the further you shoot it, the less damage it's going to do. The vertical recoil patterns are slightly more accentuated too, meaning it's harder to control on the upwards if you're trying to spam it. It does, however, compensate for the drop-off damage by having a higher set of base damages. It deals 24 to the arms and legs, and you can see that in general, it hits a little bit harder than the M14 Ebr at close range. This compensates for that drop-off damage slightly, but not to a major extent, especially when you're firing at very long range. This weapon is good, and on the Fearless Fjord you'll have a very similar playstyle with it than you would have had with the M14 Ebr. It very much suits a sniper-style play because of the single shot mode that it has. Having a look at the M4A1 now. Now this is the benchmark weapon for pretty much every weapon in the game. Most weapons and most rifles that you'll compare to the M4A1 because it is just the most common rifle, and honestly it is just jack of all trades, pretty standard, doesn't excel at anything but doesn't suck at anything either. You do need more attachments than every other weapon to make this good, however. It does have the unique M4 stock attachment, but everything else is pretty much middle of the line. The recoil pattern and the horizontal recoil pattern are medium, which is to say it's not as bad as something like the AK, but not as good as something like the M14 Ebr. It's smack bang in the middle. Most guns' damages are based off the same damage that the M4A1 has. So this is just your standard rifle. It will do you well, but it's nothing special. It's just a very good workhorse rifle. The AR-15, which is technically the civilian version of the M4A1, is actually in a lot of ways, slightly better than the M4. It has a slightly higher rate of fire. However, the one drawback of the AR-15 compared to the M4 is that its vertical recoil is much more accentuated. Horizontal recoil, less so, but vertical recoil, it is much more accentuated and much harder to control. The good thing about this is that vertical recoil is easier to control on something like an iPad or a phone than horizontal recoil. So you can always counteract vertical recoil by dragging down when you're aiming. It requires less attachments to make work, and with a higher rate of fire and exactly the same damage, it technically has more DPS than the M4. So I personally always favour this over other rifles, especially when I'm playing on the first map, the 120-player map. We're going to look at now the equivalent of the AR-15 on the Fearless Fjord, which is the ACR. Literally exactly the same gun. I honestly did a video on this, and comparing them is almost identical. The same damage, very similar recoil patterns, the drop-off damage is the same, the attachments are the same, the fire rate is the same. This gun is basically the AR-15. The only difference is that the vertical recoil is slightly easier to control. It doesn't kick like a donkey like the AR-15 does. So you can get to grips with using this, and it's a lot more forgiving if you're trying to spam it than the AR-15. So for all intents and purposes, this is better than the AR-15, and I called the AR-15 the best automatic rifle in the game. So if this is better than the AR-15, I think the ACR is qualifying as the best fully automatic rifle that this game has to offer, especially given how accessible it is on the Fearless Fjord. So if you can get your hands on an ACR, I thoroughly recommend using it. It is one of the better weapons on that map. Now we are at good old faithful, the AKM, which is just a later iteration of the AK-47. This is a very hard-hitting rifle. It's got insanely high damage, the highest damage rifle in the game, with two modes of fire, single shot and automatic. It takes attachments similar to the M14 Ebr, which is the fact that it takes a front end, a scope and a mag attachment. It does suffer from drop-off damage. Now the compensation for the very high damage that the AK can put out is the fact that the vertical and horizontal recoil are very high. You thought that the AR-15 kicked like a donkey, this kicks like a donkey that is sideways. It literally sprays everywhere. Very difficult to control in automatic mode, and it's got pretty high single-shot recoil as well. The AK can be efficiently used at long range like a sniper. However, short range, you definitely need to try and keep it under control by dragging down, trying to control that recoil. It is a very, very good short-range rifle, though. I would thoroughly recommend it in short-range engages because obviously, bullet for bullet, it deals significantly more damage than every other rifle. Looking at the AUG, this is only available in loot crates. It is very comparable to the ACR and the A15 in terms of rate of fire. It's a very high rate of fire weapon. It does have drop-off damage. The damage is on that same scale that the M4, the AR-15, the ACR, the M14 Ebr are all on, so it does the same damage at every range than those guns. The recoil is low on this weapon. It is very easy to control. However, I never really noticed that much difference between it and the ACR. It's an interesting weapon to put in a loot crate, as I think the M14 Ebr is strictly better than this. However, I can see why people really like this gun, and it's definitely something that you want to get your hands on if you're a fan of automatic fire, because it is a good automatic fire rifle and can maintain accuracy even when firing automatically. Now we're going to look at the M249. The only attachment this can have is a scope. It is a light machine gun. The damage is slightly higher than your average rifle. It does not suffer from drop-off damage, so at whatever range you fire this at, it will deal the same damage, which is why it works pretty well with long-range scopes. And honestly, the recoil is not as bad as you might think. Actually, I was hesitant to put medium because it really feels like low to medium recoil, but I've seen varying clips of it spraying wildly and people using it like a laser. But in general, this weapon is a great spray weapon, and you can definitely use this to laser down someone from long range. It also has a pretty good single shot mode which you can use at long range because of no drop off damage. This weapon is also great at absolutely plastering cars. If you empty a clip of this into any car in the game, it will destroy it. So in general, this weapon is awesome to get your hands on. It's sort of very versatile at long range and short range. I hope you guys enjoyed. That is all of the rifles that we've covered today. I still think the M14 Ebr would be my weapon of choice if I had the option to choose from every single rifle here. However, the ACR is a very good weapon on the new map. Obviously, the M249 is great as well because of how versatile that weapon is. One of the only two in this list that don't suffer from drop-off damage. I wouldn't technically classify it as a rifle. It is a light machine gun. However, it is still great, and if you can get your hands on it from a crate, all the better, because it's a very, like I said, very versatile gun. Hope you guys enjoyed, and you can kind of use this to compare. I would always recommend the M14 Ebr from the first map, and I always recommend the ACI if you can get your hands on it from the second. They are both great weapons. See you next time.